I sat in a conference room at the Franklin County Courthouse, staring across the table at my own grandson. Tyler was 28 years old, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my first car. He was explaining to a judge in that smooth, concerned voice of his why I was no longer mentally capable of managing my own affairs. "Your Honor," he said, "my grandfather has been showing signs of confusion for months, memory lapses, paranoid accusations against family members. I'm only trying to protect him." The judge nodded, sympathetic, understanding. After all, Tyler looked the part, the loving grandson, the responsible young man stepping up when his elderly grandfather started to slip. But I wasn't slipping. I sat there in silence, my hands folded on the table, watching Tyler perform. He was good, I'll give him that. He'd practiced this moment, rehearsed every word. He thought he had me cornered. What he didn't know was that inside my briefcase, sitting right there on the floor beside my chair, was every piece of evidence he never knew I'd gathered. Forged documents with impossible dates, bank records showing $47,000 in unauthorized transfers, a forensic report proving he'd been spying on my computer for over a year. And something else, something that had kept me awake for 6 weeks straight. My wife's diary. The diary that made me question whether Nancy really took her own life, or whether my grandson had something to do with it. In about 10 minutes, everything Tyler had built was going to collapse. His reputation, his freedom, his whole constructed identity. But to understand how a 61-year-old retired paralegal ended up in a courtroom fighting for his own freedom, you need to know how I got here. You need to know about the diary I found hidden in my wife's nightstand, the diary that changed everything. If I had found it 2 months earlier, Nancy might still be alive, but I didn't, and that will haunt me for the rest of my days. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. If you're watching this and you're over 50, you already know how the world sees us. They think we're slow, out of touch, easy targets. They think because we've got gray hair and we don't understand every new app on the phone, we must be losing our minds. Well, I'm here to tell you they're wrong. Subscribe to John Vengeance if you're ready to see what happens when they underestimate the wrong man. Because what I did to my grandson, he never saw it coming. Now let me take you back to where this all started. My name is Harold Mitchell. Most folks call me Harry. I'm 61 years old, and for 30 years I worked as a senior paralegal at Brennan & Associates, a mid-sized law firm in Columbus, Ohio. Estate law, civil litigation, document preparation. I spent 30 years reading the fine print that most people skip, spotting the errors that most people miss, learning that the devil really is in the details. Before that, I served 4 years in the United States Army, 79 to 83. Nothing glamorous, no combat, but it taught me discipline, patience, how to keep my mouth shut and my eyes open. I retired 3 years ago, paid off the house, a modest place in Westerville, about 1,800 square feet. Nancy and I had lived there for 22 years, raised our kids there, watched the neighborhood change around us. Nancy. Stop. I need you to understand something about my wife, because what I'm about to tell you changes everything. Nancy and I were high school sweethearts, Zanesville, Ohio, class of 1980. She was the pretty girl who sat behind me in English class and corrected my grammar. I was the quiet kid who walked her home after school. We got married the summer after graduation, 38 years together. She wasn't perfect, neither was I. We had our rough patches. My daughter Karen and I had a falling out 15 years back, and Nancy was caught in the middle. But through all of it, Nancy was my partner, my anchor, the one person I trusted completely. 8 months ago, she died. The official report said suicide, overdose on sleeping pills. They found her in our bedroom on a Tuesday morning. I'd been at a doctor's appointment. When I came home, she was already gone. The weeks after that are a blur. I barely ate, barely slept. The house felt like a tomb. Every room held a memory. Every silence reminded me she wasn't there to fill it. That's when Tyler showed up. My grandson Tyler is the son of my daughter Karen. Karen and I weren't close for years, not since her first marriage fell apart and she blamed me for not supporting her enough. We'd been civil at holidays, but that was about it. So when Tyler suddenly started coming around after Nancy's funeral, I was surprised, but I was also grateful. He'd bring groceries, offer to help with paperwork. He said he wanted to be there for me, said he felt bad that we'd lost touch over the years. He even moved to an apartment just 15 minutes away, said he wanted to be close in case I needed anything. I believed him. When you're drowning in grief, you don't ask too many questions about the hand that's pulling you up. You just grab on. Tyler offered to help me consolidate my finances, make things simpler. He said I had too many accounts, too much paperwork to keep track of. He set up online banking, got me to sign some documents, helped me organize Nancy's affairs. I let him do it. I was 60 years old, exhausted, and my wife had just died. I didn't have the energy to question why my grandson was suddenly interested in my retirement accounts. That was my first mistake. 3 months after Nancy's death, I finally forced myself to clean out her belongings. I'd been putting it off. Every time I opened her closet, I could still smell her perfume. Every drawer I touched felt like a violation. But the grief counselor said it would help, said I needed to face it. So one Saturday afternoon, I started with her nightstand. Old reading glasses, a worn copy of her favorite novel, greeting cards from birthdays past. And at the very bottom, beneath a stack of old anniversary cards, I found something I'd never seen before. A small leather diary, brown cover, no markings. I almost set it aside, almost told myself it was nothing, private thoughts, maybe something from years ago. But something made me open it. The first entry was dated 4 months before Nancy died. The handwriting was hers, tight, precise cursive, the same handwriting I'd seen on grocery lists and birthday cards for 38 years. But the words were nothing like I expected. "Something's wrong with the accounts," she wrote. "Statements are arriving for things I don't recognize. I asked Harry, but he doesn't remember signing up for them. He says Tyler helped him set everything up. I need to look into this." I sat down on the bed. My hands were shaking. I kept reading. Over the next 3 months, Nancy had documented everything. She'd noticed withdrawals that didn't match our spending, transfers to accounts we didn't own, signatures on documents that looked like mine but weren't quite right. She'd traced it all back to Tyler. "Tyler's been moving money," she wrote in one entry. "Small amounts at first, but it's adding up. I found a statement for an account in Harry's name that Harry's never seen. The address on the statement is Tyler's apartment." The diary gave me names, dates, and a trail to follow. But the proof I needed, that came from somewhere I never expected. Nancy hadn't gone to me with what she'd found. She hadn't gone to the police. The diary showed she was scared, confused. She didn't know who to trust. And then I reached the final entry, dated 3 days before she died. "Confronted T today. He denied everything, said I was confused, said I was getting old and imagining things. But the look in his eyes, he knows I know. I don't know what to do. Should I go to the police? Talk to Karen? She won't believe me. She never believes me."
I read that entry 4 times. Confronted T today. 3 days later, my wife was dead. I sat on that bed for a long time, the diary in my lap, the house silent around me, and something shifted inside me. The grief was still there, but now there was something else underneath it. Cold, quiet, steady. I'd spent 30 years as a paralegal, 30 years reading documents, spotting inconsistencies, building cases. I knew how to find the truth buried in paperwork. I knew how to trace money. I knew how to prove what people wanted to hide. Tyler thought I was just a confused old man, drowning in grief, easy to manipulate. He was about to find out how wrong he was. The next morning, I pulled out every document Tyler had helped me sign over the past year. Power of attorney forms, account applications, transfer authorizations, and I started reading them the way I'd read thousands of legal documents before. Not skimming, not trusting, reading. It didn't take long. The first thing I noticed was the font on the power of attorney. It was dated 14 months ago, but the font was Calibri Light, and I knew for a fact that my printer couldn't produce Calibri Light until I'd updated my computer 6 months ago. The document was backdated. Then I looked at the signatures. When I compared them side by side, my hands started shaking because they were close, too close. Someone had practiced my handwriting for a long time, but when you've been signing your name the same way for 60 years, you know every curve, every pressure point. These signatures were good, almost perfect, but they weren't mine. There were tiny hesitations in the wrong places, micro-tremors that suggested someone was copying rather than flowing. And one letter, the way I cross my T's, was slightly off in every single signature. Someone had forged my name on legal documents, documents that gave them access to my money, my property, my life. I checked the notary stamps next. 2 of the documents were notarized by someone named Patricia Weber. A quick search of the Ohio Secretary of State database showed me that Patricia Weber's notary license had been suspended 8 months before the date on those documents. Impossible, unless the documents were forged after the fact. I created a timeline. I photographed everything. I made copies and stored the originals in a folder I kept hidden in my basement. And then I called the one person I knew I could trust. Frank Kowalski. Frank lived 3 houses down. We'd been neighbors for 15 years, not best friends, but solid, fellow veterans. He'd served in Vietnam, 78 to 71. We'd drink a beer on the porch sometimes, go fishing twice a year. He was at Nancy's funeral. More importantly, Frank knew what it looked like when someone preyed on the elderly. His own mother had been victimized by a home health aide years back. He'd watched it happen, tried to stop it, and never forgot the helplessness he felt. When I showed him the diary and the documents, Frank didn't hesitate. "Harry, we're going to nail this son of a bitch." Frank suggested I check my credit report, something I hadn't done in years. When the report came back, my stomach dropped. 3 accounts I'd never opened, credit cards with balances I'd never charged, all opened in the past 14 months. Frank's son, Danny, worked in IT security for a tech company in Columbus. When Frank told him what was happening, Danny drove over that same night. "Mr. Mitchell, can I take a look at your computer?" What Danny found made everything else look like a warm-up. There was software installed on my machine, a keylogger. It had been recording every keystroke I made for over a year, every password, every email, every time I logged into my bank account. All of it was being sent to an external server. Danny traced that server to an IP address registered to an apartment in Columbus, Tyler's apartment. My grandson hadn't just been stealing from me, he'd been watching me every day, every transaction, every private thought I typed on that keyboard. He knew what I was doing before I did it. Danny created a forensic report, time-stamped, documented, the kind of evidence that would hold up in court. I had the diary, I had the forged documents, I had the financial records, I had the digital surveillance proof. Now I needed to figure out what to do with all of it, because Tyler didn't know I knew, and I intended to keep it that way, at least for a little while longer. For the next 2 weeks, I played the part Tyler expected,
The confused old man, the grieving widower who couldn't quite keep track of things. I let him help me with my pill organizer, let him check my mail, let him think he had me right where he wanted me. But every night after Tyler left, I was working, organizing evidence, building a case. 30 years of paralegal training doesn't just disappear because you're retired. I thought I was being careful. I thought I was one step ahead. I was wrong. Tyler must have sensed something. Maybe I asked too many questions about the accounts. Maybe my act wasn't as convincing as I thought. Or maybe he'd been planning this all along, and I just accelerated his timeline. Either way, 3 weeks after I found the diary, I got a certified letter from the Franklin County Probate Court. My grandson had filed an emergency petition for guardianship. The document was 12 pages long. I read every word, and with every paragraph, my blood pressure climbed higher. According to Tyler's petition, I was showing significant cognitive decline. I was making paranoid accusations against family members. I was at risk of financial exploitation by outside parties. That last one almost made me laugh. The fox was telling the court that the chickens needed protection from wolves. Tyler thought I was just a confused old man, drowning in grief, easy to manipulate. He was about to find out how wrong he was. The next morning, I pulled out every document Tyler had helped me sign over the past year. Power of attorney forms, account applications, transfer authorizations, and I started reading them the way I'd read thousands of legal documents before. Not skimming, not trusting, reading. It didn't take long. The first thing I noticed was the font on the power of attorney. It was dated 14 months ago, but the font was Calibri Light, and I knew for a fact that my printer couldn't produce Calibri Light until I'd updated my computer 6 months ago. The document was backdated. Then I looked at the signatures. When I compared them side by side, my hands started shaking because they were close, too close. Someone had practiced my handwriting for a long time, but when you've been signing your name the same way for 60 years, you know every curve, every pressure point. These signatures were good, almost perfect, but they weren't mine. There were tiny hesitations in the wrong places, micro tremors that suggested someone was copying rather than flowing. And one letter, the way I cross my T's, was slightly off in every single signature. Someone had forged my name on legal documents, documents that gave them access to my money, my property, my life. I checked the notary stamps next. 2 of the documents were notarized by someone named Patricia Weber. A quick search of the Ohio Secretary of State database showed me that Patricia Weber's notary license had been suspended 8 months before the date on those documents. Impossible, unless the documents were forged after the fact. I created a timeline. I photographed everything. I made copies and stored the originals in a folder I kept hidden in my basement. And then I called the one person I knew I could trust. Frank Kowalski. Frank lived 3 houses down. We'd been neighbors for 15 years, not best friends, but solid, fellow veterans. He'd served in Vietnam, 78 to 71. We'd drink a beer on the porch sometimes, go fishing twice a year. He was at Nancy's funeral. More importantly, Frank knew what it looked like when someone preyed on the elderly. His own mother had been victimized by a home health aide years back. He'd watched it happen, tried to stop it, and never forgot the helplessness he felt. When I showed him the diary and the documents, Frank didn't hesitate. "Harry, we're going to nail this son of a bitch." Frank suggested I check my credit report, something I hadn't done in years. When the report came back, my stomach dropped. 3 accounts I'd never opened, credit cards with balances I'd never charged, all opened in the past 14 months. Frank's son, Danny, worked in IT security for a tech company in Columbus. When Frank told him what was happening, Danny drove over that same night. "Mr. Mitchell, can I take a look at your computer?" What Danny found made everything else look like a warm-up. There was software installed on my machine, a keylogger. It had been recording every keystroke I made for over a year, every password, every email, every time I logged into my bank account. All of it was being sent to an external server. Danny traced that server to an IP address registered to an apartment. I got dressed and went out to the garage. Frank was on his back under my Honda, a flashlight in his hand. He slid out and showed me his phone. He'd already taken pictures. The cut was precise, deliberate. This wasn't an accident. Tyler had a key to my house. He'd offered to make a copy months ago, just in case of emergencies. He knew my garage code. He knew my schedule. My grandson had tried to kill me. That thought should have terrified me. Instead, it made me calmer, colder. When someone tries to kill you, the games are over. You stop worrying about being fair. You start worrying about being smart. Frank documented everything. We took the car to a mechanic he trusted, someone who would provide a written statement about the brake line damage before repairing it. More evidence for the file. But Tyler wasn't done. Over the next 2 weeks, I started feeling strange, dizzy spells, confusion, moments where I couldn't remember what I'd been doing 5 minutes earlier. At first, I thought it was stress. Then I thought maybe Tyler was right. Maybe I was losing my mind. Frank noticed the change. He came over one afternoon and found me sitting in the kitchen, staring at the wall, unsure how long I'd been there. "Harry, this isn't like you. When did this start?" I tried to think. About 2 weeks ago, after Tyler organized my medications. Frank's expression changed. "Show me your pills." We compared my blood pressure medication to the pharmacy records. The pills in my organizer were the right color, the right shape, but Frank noticed they were slightly larger than the ones in the original bottle from the pharmacy. We drove to a walk-in clinic. The doctor drew blood. 2 hours later, he called with the results. The medication levels in my bloodstream were more than double what they should have been. Someone had switched my pills with a higher dosage. Not enough to kill me immediately, just enough to make me confused, disoriented. Exactly the kind of symptoms that would support Tyler's guardianship petition. If I walked into that courtroom foggy and confused, the judge would take one look at me and hand Tyler everything he wanted. I moved my medications to Frank's house that night. From then on, I took only pills that came directly from the pharmacy in sealed bottles that I opened myself. And I kept playing the part. When Tyler came to visit, I acted confused, repeated myself, pretended I couldn't remember what day it was. He smiled and nodded and spoke to me slowly like I was a child. "Don't worry, Grandpa. I'm going to take care of everything." "I'm sure you are," I thought. I let Tyler believe he was winning. For 6 weeks, I played the confused old man, because what I had planned for that country club dinner, he never saw it coming. If you're still here with me, I appreciate you more than you know. It means this story matters. It means you understand what it feels like to fight back when everyone thinks you've already lost. Hit that like button so this story can reach more people who need to hear it. Now, here's where I finally turned the tables. Tyler belonged to a country club, Worthington Hills, up in the suburbs north of Columbus. Nice place. Golf course, tennis courts, fancy restaurant. The membership cost $12,000 a year. He couldn't afford it, not on his salary, but he'd been paying for it with money stolen from me. I found out about the membership when I traced the unauthorized transfers from my accounts. One recurring payment every month to Worthington Hills Country Club. Tyler was using my retirement savings to impress people, to play the part of successful young professional, to rub elbows with wealthy clients and pretend he belonged. That membership was going to be his undoing. I'd spent 6 weeks gathering evidence, playing weak and waiting. Now it was time to act. First, I contacted the Columbus Police Department's Elder Abuse Unit. A detective named Sandra Chen reviewed my evidence: the forged documents, the bank records, the forensic report on the keylogger, the brake line photos, the blood tests showing the medication tampering. She was thorough, skeptical at first, the way good detectives should be, but the evidence was solid. "Mr. Mitchell," she said after our third meeting, "this is one of the most documented cases of elder exploitation I've ever seen. We can make an arrest, but I want to do this right. I want to make sure he can't talk his way out of it." "I have an idea," I said. Detective Chen listened, and then she smiled. Tyler had been planning a dinner at the country club, a chance to impress potential investors for some financial scheme he was running. He'd been talking about it for weeks, telling me how important it was, how it could change his life. He was right about that last part. I contacted the club manager, a woman named Patricia Holland. She remembered Nancy. Years ago, Nancy had helped organize a charity auction at the club. She was sorry to hear about her passing and surprised to learn that Tyler was my grandson. He told us he was an independent financial consultant, made it sound like he came from money. "I came from my money," I said, "and I'd like to be there when he tries to spend more of it." Patricia arranged for me to attend the dinner as a guest. She'd make sure I had access to the main dining room. She didn't know exactly what I was planning, but she trusted that Nancy's husband wouldn't cause a scene without good reason. She was half right. The night of the dinner, I put on my best suit, the one I'd worn to Nancy's funeral. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. I wasn't the grieving widower anymore. I wasn't anybody's confused grandfather. I was a paralegal with 30 years of experience and a briefcase full of evidence. Frank drove me to the club. Detective Chen and 2 uniformed officers were waiting in the parking lot. "You sure about this?" Frank asked. "Never been more sure of anything in my life." We walked through the main entrance. The dining room was elegant. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, soft lighting. At the center table, Tyler sat with 4 well-dressed men and women, potential investors, people with money he wanted to access. He was mid-pitch when we walked in, talking about opportunities and portfolios and exclusive access. He was good at it, smooth, confident. Then he saw me. His face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds: surprise, confusion, and then something darker, fear. But he recovered fast. He stood up, smiled that charming smile. "Grandpa, what are you doing here? This is a business dinner." I walked to the center of the room, Frank beside me, Detective Chen and the officers behind us. "I know exactly what this is, Tyler." The investors looked uncomfortable. Tyler laughed nervously. "Grandpa, you're confused. Let me take you home and we can talk about this later." "I'm not confused," I said. "I haven't been confused for a long time, but you've been counting on everyone thinking I was." I opened my briefcase. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said to the investors, "I apologize for interrupting your dinner, but I think you deserve to know who you're really dealing with." Tyler's smile disappeared. I pulled out the first document, the power of attorney with the impossible date. This document is dated 12 months ago, but the font it's printed in wasn't available on my computer until 6 months ago. The notary stamp is from someone whose license was suspended 8 months before the date shown. This document is forged. I set it on the table. Tyler's face was pale now. I pulled out the bank records. Over the past 14 months, $47,000 has been transferred from my accounts without my knowledge or consent. The money went to credit card payments, a car lease, and a country club membership. This country club. The investors were staring at Tyler now. One of them pushed back from the table. I pulled out the forensic report. My grandson installed surveillance software on my computer, a keylogger. Every password I typed, every email I sent, every bank transaction I made was transmitted to his apartment. This report documents the software, the data it collected, and the IP address it reported to. Tyler stood up abruptly. His chair fell backward. "This is insane. You're delusional. This is exactly what I was telling the court. He needs help." I pulled out the final item, Nancy's diary. This belonged to my wife. She died 8 months ago. The official report said suicide, but before she died, she discovered what Tyler was doing. She documented everything, and 3 days before she died, she confronted Tyler. I opened the diary to the last entry. "Confronted T today. He denied everything. The look in his eyes. He knows I know."
I looked at Tyler. 3 days later, she was dead. And you showed up at my door, so helpful, so concerned, ready to finish what you started. Tyler's composure finally cracked. "You're a senile old man," he shouted. "Nobody's going to believe you. I'm trying to help you." He lunged toward me, reaching for the diary. Detective Chen stepped forward. "Tyler Mitchell, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, identity theft, and elder abuse. We're also reopening the investigation into Nancy Mitchell's death." 2 officers moved in. Tyler struggled, shouted, called me names I won't repeat. But it didn't matter. The handcuffs clicked into place. The investors sat frozen, watching the young man they'd been about to trust get dragged out of the dining room in handcuffs. As Tyler passed me, he stopped struggling for just a moment. His eyes met mine. "She was going to ruin everything," he hissed, "just like you." Detective Chen pulled him away before I could respond. But I heard what he said, and I knew in that moment that Nancy's death wasn't suicide. I couldn't prove it, maybe I never would, but I knew. My wife had died because she tried to protect me, and my grandson had killed her for it. The dining room was silent. The investors gathered their things and left without a word. Patricia Holland stood in the doorway, her hand over her mouth. Frank put his hand on my shoulder. "You did it, Harry." I looked at the diary in my hands, Nancy's handwriting, her last words. We did it, all of us. The weeks after Tyler's arrest were a blur of depositions, court appearances, and sleepless nights. But this time, I wasn't drowning, I was fighting. Tyler was denied bail. The judge cited flight risk and the evidence of tampering with my medication. For the first time in over a year, I felt safe in my own home. The charges stacked up quickly: wire fraud, forgery, identity theft, elder abuse, and because of the brake line, attempted assault with a deadly weapon. Detective Chen and her team did thorough work. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered became part of the official case file. Tyler's lawyer tried to negotiate, claimed Tyler was under financial stress, said he'd never intended to hurt anyone, said he was sorry. I sat in that courtroom and listened to those excuses, and I thought about Nancy, about her diary, about those final words she wrote before she died. Sorry doesn't bring back the dead. The investigation into Nancy's death was reopened, just like Detective Chen promised. Investigators reviewed the original case file, interviewed witnesses, examined the timeline. In the end, they couldn't prove murder. The medical examiner said the evidence was inconclusive. There was no physical proof that Tyler had been in the house that night. No witnesses, no confession beyond that one hissed comment in the country club dining room. But the detective told me something I'll never forget. "Mr. Mitchell, I believe you. I believe he did something, but believing isn't the same as proving, and I'm sorry we can't give you that closure. Some questions don't get answered. Some justice doesn't get served. You learn to live with that, or you don't live at all." Tyler pleaded guilty to avoid trial. His lawyer knew the evidence was overwhelming. A trial would only make things worse. The sentence came down on a gray Tuesday morning in March. 8 years in state prison. Full restitution of $47,000, though the judge acknowledged I'd probably never see all of it.
Tyler's assets were frozen. His precious country club membership was canceled. His fancy car was repossessed. When the judge read the sentence, Tyler stood there in his orange jumpsuit, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. No expensive suit, no charming smile, just a 28-year-old man who'd thrown away everything for money he didn't earn and a lifestyle he couldn't afford. He didn't look at me, not once. They led him out in handcuffs. I watched him go, and I felt something I didn't expect. Not satisfaction, not triumph, just tired, bone-deep tired. I still visit Nancy's grave every Sunday. I tell her about the case, about Tyler, about the justice we got, and the questions that will never have answers. I think she'd be proud. I hope she's at peace. Some days, I almost am. The aftermath with my family was complicated. That's the polite way to put it. My daughter, Karen, Tyler's mother, refused to believe her son was guilty. She called me the night of the arrest, screaming through the phone that I'd destroyed her boy's life, that I was a bitter old man who couldn't accept that Nancy had taken her own life, that I'd manufactured evidence to punish Tyler for being successful. I tried to explain, showed her the documents, the bank records, the diary. She wouldn't look at any of it. "You were always jealous of him," she said. "You couldn't stand that he was making something of himself." That was the last real conversation we had. She sends me a card at Christmas with nothing but her signature. I send one back the same way. I don't expect that to change. Some relationships can't survive the truth. Karen chose her son over the evidence, over her own mother's words. I've made my peace with losing her. Most days. But not every door closed. My son David, my younger child, lives in Indianapolis with his wife and 2 girls. We'd drifted apart over the years. Tyler had told David I didn't want visitors, told me that David was too busy to call. He'd played us against each other, and we'd both believed it. 2 weeks after Tyler's arrest, David drove 3 hours to see me. He stood on my porch with tears in his eyes. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I should have been here. I should have known something was wrong." I hugged my son for the first time in 4 years. "You're here now," I said. "That's what matters." David calls every Sunday now. He and his wife bring the girls to visit once a month. My granddaughters are 12 and 15, smart kids, good kids. We're building something new. It's not the family I had before, but it's real. I sold the house in Westerly. Too many memories, too many ghosts. Every room reminded me of Nancy, and not all those memories were good anymore. Some were poisoned by what I'd learned, by the questions I couldn't answer. I moved to a smaller condo in German Village, a historic neighborhood in downtown Columbus. Brick streets, old buildings, quiet. The kind of place where you can walk to a coffee shop and nobody asks if you're doing okay. I started volunteering with the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. Nothing official, just helping out with elder abuse cases, reading documents, spotting inconsistencies. The same skills that saved me, used to help others. The assistant prosecutor, a woman named Margaret Torres, told me I had a gift. "Mr. Mitchell, you see things other people miss. We could use more eyes like yours."
It feels good to be useful, to take what happened to me and turn it into something that helps someone else. I even started dating, if you can call it that at my age. Her name is Judith. We met at a grief support group 6 months after Nancy died. She lost her husband to a heart attack 3 years ago. We started talking after meetings, then coffee, then dinner. It's nothing serious. We're too old for games, and neither of us is looking to replace what we lost. But it's nice to have someone to talk to, someone who understands that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. Nancy would have liked her, I think. They would have argued about books and laughed about it afterward. Looking back, I don't regret what I did. Not the investigation, not the confrontation, not any of it. Do I wish it hadn't been necessary? Every single day. I wish Tyler had been the grandson he pretended to be. I wish Nancy had lived to see justice served. I wish my daughter could accept the truth. But wishing doesn't change anything. Action does. I'm 61 years old. I've buried my wife, I've lost my daughter, I've sent my grandson to prison, and somehow I'm still standing. The best revenge isn't anger. It isn't bitterness. It isn't spending your remaining years consumed by what was taken from you. The best revenge is living, really living, finding purpose when they thought you'd crumble, finding peace when they thought you'd break, proving every single day that they didn't win. Tyler thought I was weak. He thought I was confused. He thought 30 years of reading documents and a lifetime of keeping my word made me an easy target. He was wrong. And somewhere, I believe Nancy knows that. I believe she's proud. And I believe when my time comes, I'll see her again and tell her everything. Until then, I've got work to do. So let me ask you this. Was I right to do what I did, or would you have handled it differently? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit close to home, if you've ever had to stand up for yourself when no one else would, then you understand why I had to share it. Drop a comment and tell me your story. Subscribe to John Vengeance for more stories of justice and payback, and hit that notification bell so you never miss when the tables turn. Looking back, I don't regret a thing. Not the sleepless nights, not the risks I took, not the family I lost, or the battles I fought. Because in the end, I protected what mattered. I honored my wife's memory, and I proved that getting older doesn't mean getting weaker. Stay fierce, because every story deserves its sweet moment of revenge.